the Savage Nation. Welcome to the program. Now, you've all heard about the Ground Zero Mosque, and you've been hearing about it for 2 days now. You also know that the half-Muslim president made a gigantic error by showing his true colors and flying the flag of, let us say, secular Islam. For the sake of argument, let us say that Obama is a well-meaning president. Let us say the fact that his father is a Muslim makes no difference than if one's father were Hindu and there was an issue to do with India, or if one's father were Jewish and it was an issue to do with Israel. You wouldn't look any further than that and say, well, it's his decision. And you could say that he believes that most Muslims are moderate and that the mosque should be supported and that it's just like a church and it's just like a synagogue, but you'd be wrong if you did. And the reason you would be wrong if you did is because history would not support your position. Now, all day long, you have heard about the Ground Zero Mosque. You have heard that Obama, Hamas, and Bloomberg all agree on the Ground Zero Victory Mosque. That's right. It's strange that Hamas and a Jewish mayor, Bloomberg, happen to agree on one thing, and that's that a Victory Mosque should be built at Ground Zero. Very, very interesting how liberal humanism has failed when it has come face-to-face against radical Islam. Liberal secular humanism, as you well know, is the religion of state. Although they say that we want a separation of church and state, and they keep repeating it with the vermin in the ACLU, hawking that over and over again, the fact is there is a state religion. It's called liberal humanism. And this weak religion, which does not believe in God, has utterly failed us in the war against radical Islam. Now, you may say that this has nothing to do with radical Islam. You may say that the mosque at Ground Zero is simply another house of worship. And that you may say, I agree with Barack Obama when he says that we must have religious freedom and that Muslims have the same right to build a mosque wherever they wish and practice wherever they wish on private property. Well, I would say that would be fair the day that they permit a church to be built in Saudi Arabia. The day that they permit a church or a synagogue to be built anywhere in Saudi Arabia would be a day I might believe anything that Obama says about Islam. But more particularly, let me ask the president this. Would he think that a trade might be in place where he says, I'll tell you what, I'm going to speak to King Saud, and I'm going to ask him, I think it's King, I don't even know the king's name. Sorry, I don't carry kings around in my head. The king of Saudi Arabia, since they're on first-person terms, as you remember, the president was given some bling by the king of Saudi Arabia a few years ago, something he enjoys very much, the big gold chain. He must wear it in the privacy of his own home, whatever. But since that day, I'm sure they've been in touch. So let me ask you something. Can he call up his good friend, the king of Saudi Arabia, and say there's a big hullabaloo here in my country about building the mosque so close to Ground Zero? Can you please authorize the construction of a church 2 blocks away from the site of the Hajj? Can you please authorize the construction of a synagogue 2 blocks away from the site of the Hajj? Because, after all, it's a new world order. After all, we're no longer living in the Middle Ages. After all, we know that it's a new world. And so, therefore, I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, you're wrong on every account. Now, since you have been hearing about this from the morning until now, and you cannot read about it in most newspapers because they've covered it up in order to make certain that the world goes on in ignorance, I'm going to do something that has not yet been done with regard to the Ground Zero Mosque, and I am going to disclose for the first time in the American media the 5 victory mosques that have been built around the world on the sites of other religions after the Muslims have conquered the previous inhabitants of the area. I hope you understand what I just said to you. Let's begin with the most obvious, the things you may know about. The Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem is said to be one of the holiest sites in Islam. Apparently every site is holy to Islam, but it's actually the holiest site in Judaism, because that's where the original Jewish temple was built. And it was destroyed by the Romans, and when the Muslims conquered the area, what was built on top of the Holy Temple? It was a mosque. The Al-Aqsa Mosque was built on top of one of the holiest sites in Judaism, the Temple Mount. When the Crusaders captured Jerusalem in 1099, they used the mosque as a palace and church, but its function as a mosque was restored after its recapture by Saladin. So for the simplistic reasons of history, and for those idiots amongst us who do not know their history and are going to be condemned to repeat it, I will continue with the other mosques that were built on other religious sites after the Muslims conquered that particular culture. There are quite a few others. Some you may know. Do you know about the Hagia Sophia, the largest Christian cathedral for nearly 1,000 years in what is now known as Turkey? You don't know about that. It was a great church. If you go to Turkey, you look into a mosque, and you say, my God, this is gorgeous. Wow. Those Muslims sure know how to build. But in fact, it was a Christian church for 1,000 years. Did you know that? Large cathedral, seat of the Patriarch of Constantinople, religious focal point of the Eastern Orthodox Church for nearly 1,000 years. In 1453, Constantinople, conquered by the Ottoman Turks, and a sultan ordered the building to be converted into a mosque. The bells, the altar, and sacrificial vessels, Christian symbols, by the way, were removed, and many of the Christian mosaics were plastered over by the Muslim conquerors. The Islamic features that you now see, such as the 4 minarets outside, were added to the church over the course of its history under the Ottomans. What you may not know, and which is an interesting twist on history, is that this building remained a mosque until 1935, when it was converted into a museum by the secularist Republic of Turkey. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Turkey had remained secularist? Because it was quite an advanced nation. Many of you don't know, and correct me if I am mistaken, but Turkey was the first nation in the world to grant women suffrages, women the right to vote. They preceded us in this. Turkey was so advanced, despite all of their horrors, including the Armenian Holocaust. The Turks granted women the right to vote before we did here in America, I believe. But that was then, this is now. Turkey has now become slightly radicalized and is going more and more in that direction. Let us continue with our list of victory mosques around the world, whether it be the Al-Aqsa Mosque or the Hagia Sophia in Turkey. I will give you the rest when I return in the Savage Nation, because I want you to understand that building a mosque after you have conquered a certain territory, in this case they have conquered Lower New York, is really not an anomaly. It's part of the tradition. This is something that you would expect a genius billionaire like Bloomberg to know. But then again, as you well know, Bloomberg has proven one thing if he's proven anything, which is that a billionaire can be a big, stupid moron. I shall return.
Savage.